Hey, fellow mathers, welcome to the podcast where math is figure-outable. I'm Pam Harris, a former mimicker turned mather.
And I'm Kim Montague, a reasoner who now knows how to share her thinking with others. At Math is Figure-Outable, we are on a mission to improve math teaching.
We know that algorithms are amazing achievements, but they're not good teaching tools because mimicking step-by-step procedures can actually trap students into using less sophisticated reasoning than the problems are intended to develop.
In this podcast, we help you teach mathing, building relationships with your students, and grappling with mathematical relationships.
And we invite that.
Yes, we do.
And we invite you to join us to make math more figure-outable. Wow.
What was that cartoon where they would say yabba dabba doo?
Yabba dabba doo.
Was that Barney Rubble? Was that?
I don't even.
Fred Flintstone. Fred Flintstone.
So. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I felt like I was. Isn't there a Elmer Fudd?
I think so.
I
don't remember who.
I don't even know. Yowza. All right. Kim.
Hi.
For the last few episodes, we have been kind of pulling back the curtain on what we think about as we differentiate when we work with teachers.
Yeah.
We like to differentiate not by doing separate tasks with different, like, hey, you're the low teachers and you're the high teacher. We don't do that. We don't separate teachers out.
And we don't call them that.
No, for sure we don't. Sorry. Yeah. That was me trying to be
sarcastic, but not as sarcastic to me.
Yeah, maybe it didn't come out well. We would never call teachers low and high, kind of like we would hope that you would stop calling we would invite you not to call your students low and high as well. We recognize that there are teachers who need more experience in different ways. And so the way we differentiate is not in providing different experiences for teachers. What we do is we provide an experience for teachers, but we differentiate it within that experience by recognizing different things that teachers can focus on. And we help them with that lens so that they can sort of participate in the experience, looking at it, experiencing it through that lens. And so we are, for the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and then today and next week, we will share some lenses through which you might listen to this podcast. You might be like, ooh, I think I'm kind of there and I want these experiences. And that can kind of help you sharpen your experience and make progress. Yeah. And so we're all about helping people make progress. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that we don't provide a ton of different experiences, although there are a lot of experiences. But what we don't do is say, oh, you're in stage 1, so you do this thing, or you're in stage 4, you do this thing, because we would hope you'd recognize that would be true in your classroom as well. Often, so many people come to us and like, what do I do for those kids? What do I do for those kids? And there are some specialty type activities or tasks that you might do. But so much of the time, our recommendations are the things you say to kids or what you help them focus on within the task that they're doing, like their neighbor next to them.
Within a multiple access task that you might tweak a little bit, but for the most part, it's a multiple access task. And that's the way we work with students and the way we work with teachers. So we give a multiple access task, and then we differentiate within that task by helping learners focus on what will help move their math forward. Yeah. Is that a good way to say that?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So the last 3 weeks, if you have been with us, you have heard us talk about building numeracy, building mathematics for teaching, and focusing on representing student thinking. So today we're going to tackle stage 4, which is a really exciting stage because that means that you've worked hard to build your numeracy and already own the strategies and models for your operation that you're working on. And you are ready to work on important teacher moves to make math figure-outable in your classroom. And it can be tempting to skip this stage for yourself if you're a leader, and to skip it with your teachers, maybe assuming that they have great teacher moves. But great teacher moves are helpful only if there's something to question and have conversation about in a math class. So helping teachers focus on what are the major teacher moves, but also what are the mathematics that's going to happen in your class that you want to have these moves about. So it's kind of 2 separate things to be thinking about in the stage. How do I have great math in my class? And how do I have great teacher moves to pull that math out?
Nice.
Do you want to
Yeah.
say anything
And
about that before we move on to
I
some
do.
milestones?
I
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So one of the things we work with a lot of leaders that
Hmm.
are providing professional learning for their teachers. They're coming up with systems in districts or regions or schools. And sometimes we find that people either skip this stage, like you just said, they're just
Hmm.
kind of assuming that stuff is happening. Or we also find that sometimes people only do this stage.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, I think I have a lot of colleagues out there who I respect, and they're doing excellent work about the how of teaching, and
Hmm.
they're having lots of really good conversations and work to help teachers develop. I don't want to spoil the surprise of what we're about to talk about, but develop. No, they help. They do good work towards good teacher moves, and the teachers try it, but because they don't have good math tasks,
Yep.
because there's not something worth talking about, talking to your partner about, having conversation about, representing on the board, because none of that's happening, then the how doesn't really snap.
Yep.
Like I think a lot of teachers in their minds, if all they have is my job is to teach, is to help kids rote memorize these procedures and these steps, and then their job is to mimic them. If that's all the math that they have, then why talk in math class,
Right.
and why have partner conversations, and why do all the things that we're going to sort of suggest are really good teacher moves? And hear us clearly. We agree. If the task of a math teacher is to help kids rote memorize and mimic, you don't need all this stuff. Just make it cute and have some songs and rhymes and raps and get on with life. But if math is actually a completely different thing, if it's actually about building your mathematical reasoning so that you are logically deducing your way through problems and building content at the same time, then talking in class it makes all the difference. Like there's
Right.
huge reasons to use conversation and talk and discussion and other kind of teacher moves we're going to talk about to help build students. So
Yep.
yeah, okay.
So if you're a leader in this stage, you're working with teachers, then you are going to facilitate these moves while your teachers are building their math so that they can see you use the moves in practice. And you're gonna pull them out. You're gonna have conversation about them so that teachers can experience those moves happening, so that then they can also use those moves in their classroom with their students. So a
You
couple
mean
of the
Kim, you're saying that when a leader does professional learning with teachers, they're actually supposed to not
I
just
mean,
talk about the moves. They're not
yeah,
just supposed to like have a bullet up on the thing that says, "Okay, you should not just put bullets on your
yeah.
like you're inviting leaders
All
to
the teachers
actually
right now are like, yes, we should.
you're inviting leaders to actually walk the walk.
Yes,
Like
yes,
do
yes.
mathematics with your teachers and do it in such a way that you're actually modeling the teacher moves.
And listen, this is why it's stage 4, right? Because you want to, like you said, you want to have good math in place
Mm-hmm.
that you can facilitate that good math well. And I think often what happens, maybe you said this and I dozed off, but often what happens is we talk about teacher moves first. It's not
Yeah.
even, it's not that it's the only thing they talk about, which it probably is, but it's like the first thing we do is if you facilitate well, then great math's going to happen. And that's absolutely not true. So we just highlighted a couple major milestones for this stage. A favorite of ours, you're
Mm.
using a private signal to build culture in your classroom. I feel like so many people who have listened to the podcast have heard us talk about this a number of times, but using a private signal is so important to send the message to your students or to your teachers if you're a leader that it's not about speed, that it's not about first is best, that it's not about you being concerned at all about what anyone else is doing or saying in the classroom while you're thinking about your own mathematics.
Mm.
It's a communication tool for the teacher and the student to understand where each other are. It's a great formative assessment for a teacher to learn in that moment who's ready to move on, who's not. But it's not just put a thumb up in front of your chest. There's so much more to it than that. So understanding the private signal, how to use it well, what information that it gives you, when to use a private signal and when not to use a private signal.
When to just have kids call out like in a
Uh-huh.
choral response.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add on there?
No, I think you hit it really well. It's not hands waving in the air. That's the
Right.
opposite of private, right? We're saying it's
Uh-huh.
a private response
Oh,
signal. Mm-hmm.
one more thing is how to be consistent You know, a lot of people will talk about the private signal. People see us do problem strings and like, oh, how'd you make it happen?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we'll come back time and time again about like, my kids won't do it, and understanding kind of maybe why or how to make that happen when you've tried it once or twice.
Yeah, it takes
It,
some staying
it's
power.
a move, right? It's a move that you don't just implement like instantly and it's magic. It
Yeah.
takes some work.
Take some work. Yep.
Yeah.
So we would encourage you if you've tried it, try again.
Yeah.
And jump into the Math is Forgettable teacher Facebook group, and help us see kind of what you're doing, understand, like what have you tried, and we'll get people from all around the world will help you kind of figure out what you can do to make it happen. Yeah,
right.
cool.
Another major milestone that you and I are, I almost said famous for. I don't know that it's famous, but a neutral response, using a neutral response with your students when it's appropriate.
Yeah, and let's describe what you mean by that. Do you want me to? I'll describe
go for it.
So that means that when you've asked students a question and they give you an answer, that your response to them is neutral. So you don't, oh yeah, right, or are you sure? That you literally, it's a neutral response. And Kim, right. I'll just give you a quick, super quick story. In one of the places I just was doing a workshop, we probably were halfway through the day, and a teacher, I said, does anybody have any questions or anything burning going right now? And the teacher said, I'm noticing, in fact, this is super interesting because this was I would say this is a teacher who is probably around stage 4. Like I've worked with this teacher before, and we had people that were stage 1, where you're like ranging the gamut. And this person said, I noticed that every time somebody said an answer, you said, you think it might be 13? You think you got 13? Did anybody else get 13? Anybody get any different answers? She said, you never once said, yep, 13, or whatever the answer was. And I mean, Kim, I do that all the time, right? But it was a person who was in stage 4 was ready to recognize that move and was ready to then go, okay, like it's a neutral response. You're not cueing if they're right or wrong.
Yeah. And so it could be a response with your face. It could be a response with your body language. It could be a response with your words, like you just described. And it's not, I'm so confused. Help me. It's not like, I'm so puzzled. How could you possibly say that? It's neutral, like not a give one way or the other. In fact, you and I also sometimes have a hard time getting nice pictures of us doing problem strings. Sometimes we complain we don't look like we're smiling, and it's not about not having a good relationship with your students. It's I'm interested in what you're saying and I'd like to hear more. So I'm not going to give you a yes or no, because then that tells you your thinking was only fantastic for your first thing you said. It's I want more.
I'm so glad you just said it's really all about being intensely interested. So it's not neutral and as in I don't care.
Right.
It's not right or wrong, but it's intense interest because that keeps the conversation going where learning can occur. It's not just about conversation. It's about them verbalizing their thinking, and that helps them gain clarity on their own thinking.
Yeah. Another major milestone you're working on in this stage is using a focusing rather than a funneling pattern of questioning.
Yeah, we get this from. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say you got 30 seconds, so we got to move on. But I know this is a big one for you to talk about.
Yeah, we get this from the Essential Teaching Practices, and it actually came from an article I read in, I think, my 3rd year of teaching, where it was talking about focusing and funneling. That was a while ago, y'all. And it is all about not funneling students to an answer and then going, man, I'm a good teacher, but instead helping students focus on using what they know to reason through solving a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not about specific questions that do that. It's about your pattern of questioning. So that's an important milestone would be to work on a focusing, not a funneling pattern of question.
And the more that you know the mathematics that you are working with, the more likely you are to be able to use a focusing pattern of questioning, because you have in your mind a way to respond to students wherever they are, rather than just forcing them down your one way.
Because you have a web of connections and relationships and you can draw on those. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The next milestone, are you ready to move on? Okay. The next milestone is using partner talk appropriately for specific goals. And the reason that I emphasize appropriately is because it's not hard to use partner talk. All you have to say is turn talk to your partner. And we see that a lot, but choosing when to use partner talk, for what purpose, when, at what stage in the lesson or the string, having a goal in mind for the partner talk, that takes some learning and some thinking and some exploring why partner talk and how to make it effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then lastly, using nuanced high leverage teacher moves appropriate to the task at hand. So once you've kind of got a lot of these high leverage teacher moves, then we help each other get nuanced and use them appropriately depending on what's happening. And so it's not just a stuck record, like I'm doing the thing. Oh, because you told me to do the thing. But it's like when do you use the thing and how? And Kim, not too long ago, I don't even remember where this came from, so maybe you can help me. But somebody used the phrase, "What are you realizing now?"
Mm-hmm.
And I have been trying to use that, and I was able to use it in 2 workshops in a row. I was so excited, and it was the perfect. But it just reminds me that there are just these moments where you bring it. It's I had to wait for them. I had to wait for the right moment, and it was so. I love it. It's such a good that particular phrase. What are you realizing now?
I feel like it was that Dan Meyer.
I don't know that it was Dan Meyer.
Well, but I think there are some general teacher moves that you can use lots of times in your classroom. You might see them kind of all throughout the day, but then there are more narrowed, more specific moves that you would only use maybe in a problem string, or maybe when you're working with a certain type of string, or so having enough in your arsenal that repertoire, you're picking, choosing the ones that are the best in that moment.
Yeah, nice. Yep.
Okay, so if you are at this stage, then you are learning about teacher moves and you are choosing when to use them. If you're working with teachers in this stage, a goal could be to implement these teacher moves and help them see that you are using these moves and kind of calling out when you're using them and why, and understanding when each would be useful or not.
Yeah, nice. And some action items that you could do to get better at all this is we have free video of problem strings on the web, mathisforgettable.com. Go to the problem strings, check out those videos. Y'all, if you haven't taken the free Developing Mathematical Reasoning workshop, dive into that, mathisforgettable.com/free workshop. We have free challenges a few times a year. Y'all get on our email list and join in our free challenges and watch those teacher moves in action. And then lastly, we have been writing problem string books. They are coming out as we speak. We've got problem string books now for, we will soon, for kindergarten through high school, where in those problem string books, we have sample dialogues that pull out teacher moves, call out teacher moves that suggest when you would use specific teacher moves. We realize how important that is. And so we've been writing about them. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, you are going to want to tune in to next week to hear what is the next and sort of last stage on our success map that you might be right. All right, Pam, I can solve problems using what I know. I've built my own mathematics, my own numeracy. You might be like, I've got the math for teaching. I know the major models and strategies for what I teach. You might say, Pam, I can elicit and represent student thinking, know the right model to choose at the right time. You might be like, Pam, I've been working on my teacher moves. I've got those high leverage teacher moves down. What could be next? And y'all are going to want to join in for that. Well, y'all, thanks for tuning in and teaching more and more real math. To find out more about the Math is Figureoutable movement, visit mathisfigureoutable.com and keep spreading the word that math is figureoutable.